Hi guys, and welcome back to another episode of Fortress or Not. In this video I'm gonna show you 3 positions which could be a fortress or not, and it's your choice to evaluate if it's the case or not. And I will give you some time for each of the positions so that you can think about them on your own, and after this we will discuss whether you're right or wrong. So we start with this position. Take your time to think about it, and we will right now continue with the solution. So this position here is actually a fortress, and we will see why white cannot make meaningful progress. So what you can try first is to invade with the king. Other ways don't exist. The only chance to win the game is to run here with the king and pick up this pawn. This pawn is the only weak pawn. The other pawns are pretty stable and you cannot attack them in any way because you have a dark square bishop and the king cannot enter in any other way. So we need to progress with the king, and this can be done by Zugzwang or triangulation. This is not the difficult part. One very important note for the defender is he should not leave the corner. For example, if black goes here with his king, then we can cut the king off and white will finally succeed to pick up all the pawns and white would be winning. So defensive strategy is stay as close to the corner as possible and never let the white king enter to f7, g8, because that's the only route where he can pick up the h7 pawn. So king g8 is forced, and now we already see that it's not so easy for white to progress here, as bishop g7 would already be a stalemate, and yeah, that's the key defensive idea, playing for stalemate. For example, king e7 would also be stalemate, so it's basically not really possible to come closer because there are too many stalemate ideas here. So what white can try is basically he can play king f6, but that's already the biggest trap you can set for your opponent. And now, since the white king is not ready to enter on f7, we can just go to f8. It's very important that we don't go to h8 because this would be mate. But after king f8, white cannot enter anyway, and after this we will just return to g8 and we will be waiting between those two squares, and in case he checks us we go to g8, and in this case we would go to h8 because we basically don't have a choice, and now he's not ready to create a mating grid because this would again be a stalemate, and if he plays bishop c3 we just need to be careful about this mate and not step back into the corner in this case when he has the discovered attack. So that's it for position number 1. So now we come straight to position number 2, and the question to you is this a fortress or not? It's white to move, but this is not what is important. So white to move, and can white break through or can black hold? And we will just continue with the solution. One quick note, I had been asked about this situation in one of the previous videos, how the situation changes if the pawn is on e6 instead of e7, because we already discussed the situation with pawn on e7 in one of the prior videos. So in this case, due to the pawn on e6, white is winning. Although it's not so easy, but we will see the mechanism how white can make progress here. So the first thing white needs to do is to drive the king away and force the king in front of the pawn so that the queen can enter from behind. And that's the main drawback of the pawn on e6, that there is enough space behind the pawn to create threats and to enter. So how does white actually do this? I think there are several ways. We could, for example, check, and if the king would go back, then we need to find a way to force it like to f6 or to d6. So for now the black king is cut, but we need to find some idea to make further progress, and I think one key idea could be to play queen g7 with the idea of queen f6. And after this, if we are successful with this, then the black king needs to go to d7 and we can check further. Of course, black can wait with the rook. Okay, we can also wait. And if he's waiting, which is the basic drawing strategy in the other example, we play queen f6. So now black needs to do something about this pawn. The first thing to notice, you should not play rook d6 because then you lose the coordination, and also the white king can easily enter to the 5th rank. So the most tenacious defense is king d7. But now we see the difference. There is a check, and in order to hold on to the pawn, black needs to go king d6. And now we enter with the queen on e8. And this will create further problems because at some point the king needs to go up further, and then this whole harmony between pawn and rook will be destroyed. So if black is just waiting here again with the rook, then I would suggest that we can give this very tricky check, because at the moment he cannot come here because it's mate. So the king is separated from its pawn, and now we will try to make further progress with the king, and now the position is already falling apart. It's not so easy to protect the pawn, and if rook d6, we come here and it's basically game over. Of course, the computer will show you some more tenacious defense from the black side, but to make the principles clear, I think that's already enough. And in a game you will encounter some situations, but it's important to understand the ideas. You need to make tiny steps. First step is to enter with the queen from behind to disrupt the harmony between rook and king, and to see it as a progress that the king is going forward, because that really helps white, because black loses coordination. And then in a further step, win the pawn, and after this you still need to convert queen versus rook, but that's a different story. So white is winning here, and that's it for position number 2. We continue with position number 3, and here we go. We have the following position, and it's white to move, and the question to you, as usual, is can white draw this? Is this a fortress, or will he lose? And we will talk about the solution now. So if you decided that this is a fortress, you were right, but you also need to find the right move, and there is only one move which draws the game, which is king h2. So let me first explain why could white even hope for a fortress, because white is a whole piece down and he's losing all the pawns. And the key element is that the bishop has the wrong color for this corner, and even, or especially if the white pawns were gone, then white could make the draw by just waiting in the corner, because this bishop does not control the color of the corner. Just for illustration, let's say white is just waiting and black would just take the pawns, then it would be a draw. But we will soon see that black can do better than this. So in such situation, black can make progress with the pawn, but in the end there won't be a way to make meaningful progress, because it will always lead to a stalemate in one way or another, because black is not able to control the light square in the corner because the bishop is of the wrong color. So this is a fortress, that's true, but black has some winning ideas, and the winning ideas are based on white's extra pawn on the g file. So let's explain the winning idea now. So if white would just go to h1, then black would not pick up this pawn, because then it would be a draw, but he would instead go king h3. So after this, white has two moves. One of them is basically very easy to refute because now we don't have a corner pawn. So this pawn is just winning the game here, coming with check, followed by bishop check. So white needs to play king g1. And again, black should not be greedy, not take the pawn, because after this white has this fortress by just waiting. But instead he could give a check. And if the king goes now to the corner, then we play for some semi-stalemate and white has no other move. And that's why he needs to allow g4 and allowing the h-pawn to become a g-pawn, and then it's winning quite easily. So this semi-stalemate is the idea for black to win the game. And one could of course wonder, okay, if the semi-stalemate is the problem, why not just go to f1? Because on f1 I won't be semi-stalemated. So in this situation, black is actually ready to take the pawn, because the white king, it just has no way back to the corner, and black will just slowly guard the way to the corner and then pick up the pawn with the bishop, and the black pawn is running. So in this case, black is winning because the white king is not controlling the queening square. So for this reason, the most important thing here is that we don't allow the black king to h3. That's why the only drawing move is king to h2. In this case, if the pawns are taken, we already know that's a draw, because there is no longer the idea of semi-stalemating and forcing the g-pawn to move. And if black tries king f3, then I think we have several moves, but the easiest should be king h3. He cannot take it because it's stalemate instantly. And if king f2, we just go back. We don't let the black king enter. Maybe after king f2 we need to be accurate, but I don't think so, because after king h3 we trade the last pawn. So if black wants to try something, I think he should maybe repeat moves: king f3, king h3, bishop c5, king h2 forced, bishop f2. And in this situation we again need to be careful. If you want to solve one more exercise, you can think about, should we play king h3 or should we play king h1? And we will right now continue with the solution, and the answer is king h1 is the only correct move, because black is not threatening to go to h3 yet, so there is no danger. And if he takes the pawn, we know it's a draw and it's stalemate. And probably you could already guess why king h3 is wrong, because again there is a semi-stalemate, so it would be stalemate if it wasn't for this pawn, and so this pawn needs to sacrifice itself, which leads to checkmate in one move. So king h3 would lose, but king h1 still holds the game, and white is drawing this. So I hope you enjoyed the examples and learned some new things about fortresses. If so, give a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. I'm happy to see you in the next video. So goodbye.